What if I told you that one of the largest pharmaceutical companies on the planet spent 6.5 years fighting over an insurance check, and at the end of it, still didn't get a courtroom answer to one question that actually mattered? That's not hypothetical, that's Merck. That's NotPetya. And that's where we're starting today. I'm Darnley, and this is Darnley Cyber Cafe, where we brew the truth of today's cybersecurity landscape and what you can do about it. So tune in, unwind with your preferred cup of Java, not script. And today I'm talking about cyber insurance. And I want to be upfront about where this episode is going, because I don't want you to think this is a 45 minutes of me trash talking the entire industry. It's not. Cyber insurance is a legitimate tool. It has real value. I'm not here to tell you to cancel your policy on your way out the door. What I am here to tell you is this: insurance is not a strategy. It is not a substitute for doing the work. And the case that proves it best isn't some small business that got denied on a technicality. It's Merck, a company with the legal budget to fight for as long as it takes. And even they couldn't get a clean answer at the end of it all. So here's our roadmap for today. 3 parts. First, why cyber insurance, on the surface, looks exactly the right call. Second, why you can't lean on it the way most people think you can, using Merck's NotPetya's claim as my case study, plus some numbers that might surprise you about claims that get denied for reasons that have nothing to do with the war or nation states. And third, as always, what you actually do about it. The hygiene, the controls, the posture that determines whether you ever need that insurance claim to be airtight in the first place. Let's get into it. Let's start with the pitch, because the pitch is genuinely good. I want you to understand why so many organizations buy this coverage, because it's not irrational. Here's roughly what a standard cyber policy can cover: incident response costs, the forensics team that comes in to figure out what happened, legal counsel, because every breach of any size is now a legal event, not just a technical one, breach notification costs, and depending on how many records you're talking about and how many states or countries those people live in, that bill adds up fast. Credit monitoring for affected individuals, business interruption coverage for the revenue you lose while your systems are down, and in some cases, ransom payments, where that's legally permissible, even though I don't always recommend it. And sometimes regulatory fines or card network assessments, depending on the policy and the jurisdiction. Believe me, that's a long list, and the underlying logic is sound. You cannot eliminate cyber risk. No one can. Not your shop, not the Fortune 500 companies, not even the governments. Risk transfer, paying someone else to absorb part of that financial exposure, is a completely legitimate part of risk management strategy. It's the same logic behind fire insurance, liability insurance, any of it. There's also a practical benefit that doesn't get talked about enough. A lot of cyber policies come bundled with an incident response retainer. Now that means if you're a smaller organization with no internal security team, the moment something goes wrong, you've got a pre-vetted forensics firm and breach counsel on speed dial instead of you scrambling to find one during the worst week of your professional life. Now that's real value. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. I have a business that deals with this, so I do have an idea of what benefit these things bring to the table. And on top of all that, cyber insurance is increasingly just a box you have to check. Vendor contracts are starting to require proof of coverage, Some clients won't sign with you unless you can show a certificate. So for a lot of businesses, it's not even purely a risk decision anymore. It's a market access decision. So, real coverage, real expertise on tap, and increasingly a baseline expectation of doing business. That's the pitch, and it's a good one. Now let me tell you the problem. The pitch creates a mental model in people's heads, and that mental model is dangerous. The mental model is, quote, "We bought the policy, we're covered," end quote. Full stop, end of thought. Then they move on to other pressing needs of their company. And that's exactly the trap I want to spend the next part of this episode pulling apart. So let's go back to June 27th, 2017. A piece of malware called NotPetya starts spreading. It's disguised as ransomware. There is a ransom note, a demand for payment, the whole show. But here's the thing investigators eventually figured out. There was no actual mechanism to decrypt anything, even if you paid. NotPetya wasn't ransomware. It was just simply a wiper. Its entire purpose was destruction, dressed up to look like extortion so it would spread faster and create confusion about what was actually happening. And at the end, just simply to get paid. It moved using a couple of nasty tools. Eternal Blue, a Windows exploit that had leaked from the NSA, and Mimikatz, which harvests credentials off Windows machines. Combine those two, and NotPetya could move laterally through a network and take it down in under a minute in some cases. Once it landed, it would overwrite the master boot record. The machine's not coming back from that without a full bare metal rebuild. It was attributed to the Russian military intelligence, and the consensus saw, including from the US and UK governments, is that this was an attack aimed at Ukraine. The malware got into networks through a compromised update to a Ukrainian attack software product called MEDOC. But here's what matters for today's episode. It didn't stay in Ukraine. It spread to more than 60 countries. It hit Maersk, the shipping giant. It hit Mondelez, the snack food company, and it hit Merck. The total global damage estimate, somewhere around $10 billion with a B, for one piece of malware. For Merck specifically, roughly 40,000 computers infected, and a recovery process that took months, not days. Merck filed for a claim for $1.4 billion with a B. Now, here's a little detail I think that gets lost in how the story is told, and because it actually matters. Merck did not have a dedicated cyber insurance policy. They made this claim under their all risks property insurance, a $1.75 billion policy with a group of insurers led by Ace American. Now that's important because it means this fight wasn't really about cyber insurance exclusions specifically. It was about whether old school property insurance language, written decades before anyone was thinking about malware, could be stretched to exclude a cyber attack. And the insurance obviously said no, you're not getting paid because of something called the War Exclusion Clause, sometimes written as the hostile or warlike action exclusion, standard language in all risk and property policies for a very long time, designed to keep insurers from being on the hook for, let's say, a building getting destroyed in an actual war. The insurer's argument? NotPetya was a Russian state action against Ukraine. This was an act of war. War damage is not covered, so claim denied. I wasn't surprised to hear that. Merck said, "We're a pharmaceutical company in New Jersey. We weren't a target. We got hit by spillover from a conflict we had nothing to do with. that's not what this clause was written for. So Merck sued in 2019. Now, in January of 2022, a New Jersey Superior Court judge, Thomas J. Walsh, ruled in Merck's favor. And here's the line from that ruling I think is the whole episode in one sentence. The judge found that Merck had every right to expect the war exclusion applied only to traditional physical forms of warfare, not a non-targeted malware infection that happened to share a point of origin with a geopolitical conflict. So, as usual, the insurers appealed. In May of 2023, now a year and a half later, the New Jersey Appellate Court upheld that decision. And the Appellate Court's reasoning is worth sitting with for a while. They said the NotPetya attack was introduced to Merck through a server in its Ukraine office running tax software. But the attack itself was not sufficiently tied to a military objective, because it hit an accounting software provider, not a military or government target. In their words, this wasn't close enough to an act of war to trigger this exclusion. And then, and this is the part I want you to really ponder about, the court was explicitly asked by the insurers to define where the line actually is. Where does a cyber attack stop being ordinary cyber crime and start being an act of cyber war that insurance is allowed to exclude? And the court said, and I'm just paraphrasing here, "We decline to draw that line," end quote. They ruled on the specific facts in front of them and punted on the bigger question entirely. So the insurance weren't done. They took it to New Jersey Supreme Court. Oral arguments were scheduled. And then on January 5th, 2024, days before that hearing was supposed to happen, the insurer settled. Quietly. Terms undisclosed. Bloomberg Law called it an 11th hour deal that let everyone avoid a ruling that could have set a national precedent for the entire cyber insurance market. So let's count this up. June of 2017, the attack happens, and January 2024, the case ends. That's 6.5 years, 3 rounds of litigation, and Merck got paid. By most reasonable readings, Merck won this fight. But notice what we still don't have. After 6.5 years and 3 courts, an actual legal definition of cyber war. The hardest, most important question is this entire saga got settled out of existence before anyone had to answer it. And Merck wasn't even alone in this. Mondelez had a strikingly similar fight with Zurich over the same malware, over $100 million in claims, and that one also ended in a confidential settlement back in 2022, before it ever got a definitive ruling either. So this is why it matters beyond the, wow, that's a long lawsuit. The insurance industry took notice. Lloyd's of London responded by mandating that syndicates start excluding state-backed cyber attacks from standalone cyber policies. So that's Bulletin Y5381, which came out in 2022. Basically, the direct aftershock of Merck. And the language has kept evolving since. As of this year, of 2026, we're seeing newer clause sets, the LMA 5567 series, that try to fix the exact ambiguity Merck exposed. Instead of asking, was this state sponsored, the attribution question nobody can answer cleanly in the middle of a crisis, so the new language asks, quote, did this attack significantly impair a state's ability to function, end quote. A threshold and impact test, instead of a whodunit test. So that's a smarter way to write a clause. But notice what it does not do. It does not make the question easy. Quote, significant impairment of a state, end quote, is still going to be argued over forensically and legally. After your business has already been hit, you're still going to the test case for somebody's contract language. You might just be litigating on a slightly different question than Merck did. Now, I want to widen the lens here, because if you walk away from this episode thinking, okay, so the lesson is just don't get hit by a nation state, you've missed most of it. The war exclusion fight is dramatic and it makes headlines, but it is rare in practice. Most denied claims have nothing to do with Russia, Ukraine, China, or acts of war. Industry reporting on 2024 claims data puts the denial or dispute rate for cyber insurance claims at somewhere around 40%, so 4 in 10. And when you look at why, the picture is almost opposite of dramatic. It's administrative and it's avoidable. The biggest reason, by most accounts, misrepresentation on the application. So not necessarily lying. Most of the time, it's not even intentional. It's that gap between answering yes to do you have multi-factor authentication enabled, and the reality that MFA was enabled on some systems, configured inconsistently, or quietly disabled on a legacy server no one thought about. Well, one report I came across put the failure to maintain MFA factor in well over a third of denied claims on its own. There's an actual case in the books. Travelers versus International Control Systems, where the insurer tried to void the policy entirely after discovering MFA had been misrepresented on the application. The second pattern, failure to maintain controls that you told the insurer you had at the time you applied. Underwriting isn't a one-time conversation. If your policy requires maintained endpoint protection, current patching, and tested backups, and 6 months later those have lapsed, that's grounds for denial, even if you answered honestly at the time. Third, documentation. Even when the controls were in place, you cannot produce the logs, the configs, the proof. When an insurance forensic team comes asking after a breach, they can treat the absence of proof as evidence the control did not exist. And there is a real case, Cottage Health and Columbia Casualty, where a healthcare provider had a data exposure and the insurer denied the claim, citing misrepresented security capabilities. Fourth, notification windows. A lot of policies require you to notify the insurer within 24 to 72 hours of discovering an incident. In the actual chaos of a live breach, the systems are down, lawyers are getting looped in, executives panicking, that clock is brutally easy to miss. And lastly, and fifth, this one's kind of sneaky, sub-limits. You can have a policy that technically covers something, but caps that specific category, social engineering fraud, for instance, or business interruption, at a fraction of your overall limit. You find out about that gap exactly once when you're filing the claim. So here's my honest summary. If you're a Fortune 500 company caught in a geopolitical spillover, you might be fighting a war exclusion clause for years, even if you eventually win. And if you're literally anyone else, the much more likely failure point is something far less dramatic. A documentation gap, a notification delay, a control that worked on paper but not in practice. Either way, the policy is a contract with conditions. It is not a guarantee. And the conditions are exactly the kind of thing that's invisible to you until the day you need them the most. So, if the policy isn't the plan, then what's the plan? Here's the reframe I want you to leave today with. Cyber insurance is the financial backstop for the risk that's left over after you've done the work. It is not a replacement for the work. It is the net under the tightrope, not the tightrope itself. And here's something worth taking note. A lot of the controls insurers are now demanding at underwriting are exactly the controls that constitute good cyber hygiene anyway, and that's not a coincidence. The insurance industry has gotten a lot more sophisticated about what actually reduces claims, and they're pricing and gatekeeping accordingly. If you're already doing this stuff for your own sake, you are also de-risking your insurance relationship for free. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. Multi-factor authentication. Everywhere. But especially on anything privileged, anything remote access, anything administrative. And I mean verified, not we turn it on since 2022. Actually go and audit it. Backups are actually offline or immutable and tested, not just scheduled. Go back to NotPetya for a second. That was a wiper, not a ransomware. If your backup strategy assumes you'll eventually get a decryption key, you've already lost against an attack like that. The only thing that saves you from a wiper is a clean, isolated, recently tested backup that the malware never touched. Patch management with an actual service level agreement attached to it. Not a, we'll get it when we get it. Known, unpatched vulnerabilities are still one of the most common ways attackers get in. And, quote, we know about it and didn't fix it, end quote, is precisely the kind of pattern that turns into a denied claim. Modern endpoint detection and response, not legacy antivirus that's looking for known signatures from 5 years ago. An incident response plan that has actually been tested. Tabletop exercises, not a binder that's been sitting in a SharePoint folder since your last audit. The first time you read your own incident response plan should not be during the incident. Third-party vendor risk review. NotPetya is a great example of this too. It got into Merck's network and a lot of other companies' networks through one piece of tax software. Your security posture is only as strong as the weakest vendor you've plugged into your environment. If you listen to Season 6, Episode 52, where I get into more details regarding your weakest vendor. Documentation discipline. If you cannot prove a control existed and was maintained for insurance purposes, it might as well have not existed. Keep your logs, keep your configs, keep records of your training, your patch cycles, and your access reviews. One more, and this one's boring, but it matters. Actually read your policy before you need it. Know your exclusions, know your sublimits, know your notification window. Write it on a sticky note if you have to, because that clock starts the moment you discover something's wrong, not the moment you've calmed down enough to think about your insurance policy. Get a broker or counsel to walk through it with you, not just the salesperson who sold it to you. Now, I do want to be honest with you about something, because I promised at the beginning of this episode I wasn't going to oversell either side of this. For a sophisticated, well-resourced, nation-state grade attack, there is no checklist that guarantees you immunity. Segmentation, hygiene, tested backups, all of that reduces your blast radius and speeds up your recovery. None of it makes you bulletproof against an adversary with that level of resourcing. That's an uncomfortable thing to say on a podcast that's supposed to give you actionable advice. But sorry, it's the truth. And Merck's case puts it in writing better than I ever could. They had $1.75 billion policy and 6.5 years of litigation, and they still didn't end up with a clean legal answer about what counts as cyber war. So the goal here isn't never get breached. No one can promise you that. If they do, they are clearly lying. The goal is survive being breached with minimal disruption, recover quickly, and have a claim, if you need one, that actually holds up because you did the work before you needed it to. All right, let's bring this home. If you take one thing from today's episode, here's the short version. Buy the insurance if it makes sense for your risk profile. It is a legitimate tool, and for a lot of organizations, it's table stakes now. But buy it as your last line of defense, not your first. Read the exclusions and the sublimits before you sign, not after you've been breached. Verify your multi-factor authentication is actually enforced everywhere it matters, not just configured once. Test your backups like your business depends on it, because it does. Run your incident response plan as a drill at least once before you ever need it for real. Vet your vendors, because their weak link becomes your weak link. And document everything, because in a dispute, we did the work and we can prove we did the work are two very different sentences. Cyber insurance can help you absorb a hit. It cannot prevent the hit. And as Merck found out, it might not even resolve cleanly once you've taken it. The companies that come out of an incident in the best shape are not the ones with the biggest policy limits. They're the ones who've already done the unglamorous work long before anyone ever had to file a claim. If today's episode gave you something to think about, do me a favor. Hit follow, leave a rating, or share this with someone who needs to hear it. It costs you nothing and it keeps the conversation going. I'm Darnley, and this has been Darnley Cyber Cafe, where your digital exhaust stops here. Stay sharp, stay private, and remember, the less you leave behind, the less they have on you.